The river had become a living thing, swollen with 3 days of relentless storm, thrashing against the ruins of HFY Delta like a beast hungry for land. Brown water boiled over broken causeways and surged beneath the twisted skeleton of bridge. 17, the concrete slabs shuddering as if they remembered their collapse. Wayne Tanner stood on the fractured edge, boots sunk ankle-deep in mud, rain crawling down the collar of his jacket. He had seen storms break men, but the river had no arrogance. It only took what it wanted. That he respected. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing against the blur of rain. Each flood left its signature. He knew where the earth slumped first, where the waterline crept higher each season. It was routine, like the quiet drills of reconnaissance during the border wars. Observe, measure, expect the worst. The ghosts of his training never left, and they guided his hand even now as he marked another scar of waterline against the concrete. His scarred jaw tightened at the memory of war, but he forced it back to the present. Here, survival had no orders but his own. The current shifted. Something tangled, chaotic, tore past a half-sunken beam. He almost dismissed it as driftwood, but then he saw it again, long strands twisting like kelp, green against the muddy torrent. His breath hitched, eyes narrowing. An arm broke the surface, fingers clawing desperately at the air before vanishing. His heart thudded once, sharp and cold. Not debris, not a ghost. Someone was drowning. Training overrode hesitation. He stripped. His jacket, yanked the rope from his belt, and knotted it around a jagged rebar stub. He tested it with 2 sharp pulls. Solid. The free end looped around his waist. Boots gone, knife left behind. He hit the water without another thought. The shock nearly stole his breath. The river pressed down heavy, cold, pulling him into its throat. He gritted his teeth, angled his body, and let the current drag him sideways. Rain stung his eyes. Grit blurred his vision, but he forced them open, scanning the chaos. There a pale shape tumbling under, hair like weed twisting around her face. He dove. The water crushed his chest, lungs burning. His hand closed around an arm, slick and small but strong beneath the skin. He pulled hard, kicking upward. Her body was limp, lips blue, ceremonial fabric trailing like ribbons. He hauled her against him, broke the surface with a gasp, and fought. Toward the rope. The current slammed him sideways into a broken beam, pain sparking white along his ribs, but he never let her slip. Hand over hand, he dragged them to the slab, muscles straining, the rope cutting deep into his palms. At last, he shoved her onto the concrete, heaving himself up beside her. She lay still, chest shallow, lips parted. Too shallow, too still. Wayne dropped to his knees, pressed his palms against her sternum, and began compressions, rhythm steady. His breath came sharp and ragged, but his hands never faltered. He tilted her head, sealed his mouth to hers, forced air into lungs that resisted. Again, until suddenly she convulsed, water spilling from her lips in a harsh cough. She jerked sideways, body shaking as she retched. Relief cut through. Him so fierce it almost unmoored him. He steadied her gently, rolling her to her side until the spasms passed. She blinked, golden eyes opening slowly, darting around with a predator's sharpness, even through the haze. Her voice rasped raw, cracked by the river. "Don't touch me." His hand rested on her shoulder, steady but unyielding. "You're safe. Breathe." She tried to shove him away, weakly, a token resistance. Then her body sagged, shivering hard, unable to hold itself upright. Wayne stripped his undershirt in one motion, wrapped it around her shoulders, and pulled her against his chest. She clawed at him once, but the fight drained out of her in seconds. He rose, her weight in his arms, the storm still raging overhead. His face remained calm, eyes fixed on the muddy slope leading toward his cabin. He would get her warm, he would. Get her dry. And then he would find out who she was, and why she had been in the river at all. But even as he carried her, the image of her limp body beneath the water replayed unbidden. The storm had taken many. He refused to let it take her. Not today. Not while he still had strength left in his hands. The cabin door groaned as Wayne shoved his shoulder against it, wood swollen from 3 days of storm. Warmth breathed out from the iron stove inside, coals dim but alive. He kicked the door shut with his heel and carried the woman to the bench by the hearth. She stirred faintly, her head lolling against his chest, damp green hair sticking to his skin. He crouched, lowering her onto the bench. The firelight licked across her skin-deep blue, faintly luminous when wet, as if the river had left a sheen upon her. Her lips trembled from cold. He draped a wool blanket over her, then fed the stove with kindling, thicker logs, until flames stretched high, and the cabin filled with the smell of burning sap. She blinked awake, golden eyes sharp despite the weakness in her body. She sat straighter than he expected, chin lifted, back stiff. Even shivering, she radiated pride. The oversized shirt he had wrapped her in slid off one shoulder, but she ignored it. "Take the wet gear off," Wayne said, voice steady as a flat stone. He pointed to the clean shirt hanging on the chair. "Change into that. Dry blankets there." Her gaze followed his gesture, but suspicion burned behind it. She didn't like being ordered, that much was clear. He turned away anyway, giving her privacy. Cloth whispered behind him, wet fabric sliding to the floor, metal beads sewn into. The ceremonial skirt scattered across the planks like coins. When she finally said, "Done," her voice was still rough, but held the same steel edge. Wayne glanced back. She wore his shirt, black against her skin, falling to her thighs. Damp. Hair clung to her neck, glistening in firelight. She sat tall, legs tucked neatly to the side, posture not defensive but claiming space on her terms. He crossed the room, kneeling to check the scrape on her knee, the cut on her forearm. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. "Any pain?" "In your ribs?" he asked. "No. I'll check anyway." He lifted a hand in silent question. She gave a small nod, and he pressed carefully along her sternum, each rib. No wick, no wince. Her body was compact muscle beneath damp skin. Not fragile. He wrapped the cut with boiled linen, his movements precise, controlled. He poured water from the kettle, steeping river mint and a pinch of salt, then handed it to her. "Drink." You swallowed half the river. She took the cup with both hands, concealing a tremor that betrayed her strength's limits. She sipped, eyes never leaving him over the rim. He caught the flicker of irritation when steam fogged her lashes, the faintest trace of vulnerability she hated him seeing. "You live out here alone," she said at last, her voice lower, testing. "I do." "Why?" "Survey floods for the cooperative. Send the numbers each month. Fix what I can with hand tools. Keep fools from getting killed on the bridge." His tone was even practical, but her golden eyes narrowed, catching the simplicity as a shield. Today wasn't a fool, she said. Her hand brushed the wet fragments of her ceremonial skirt on the chair. Hammered discs clinked faintly as they shifted. She turned the iron ring she had pulled from her hair, face down on the table. Wayne studied both the fabric and her expression. "Why were you in the river?" Her jaw tightened, eyes flicking to the ring as if it weighed more than stone. "Trial of return." He said nothing, letting silence draw her out. "You leap in. Swim past the marker. Climb out. Witness's record. If you pass, you return clean." Her lips thinned. "If you fail, you return marked. And if someone pulls you out." Her gaze snapped to his, bright with defiance, but the tremor in her hands betrayed how raw the words were. Then the river binds you. Sacred law. I belong to the man who saved me. Wayne's scar caught firelight as his jaw tightened. His voice stayed calm, though his gut turned cold. Do you accept that? Law. Her eyes flickered, defiance faltering just enough for truth to slip through. No, but I was born into it. The storm rattled the window. Fire hissed, sparks snapping in the stove. Wayne leaned back slightly, steady and deliberate. Then, you won't be bound by me, not by law, not by anyone. For the first time since he dragged her from the river, her posture eased by a fraction, as if the words cut through something heavier than water dot outside. Boots crunched faintly on. Wet gravel, steady, deliberate. Wayne's head turned toward the door. Serena heard it too. Her chin lifted, eyes hard. They'll ask for their record, she whispered. Wayne's voice was iron. And they'll hear more than they expected. The knock came hard enough to rattle the swollen doorframe. 3 deliberate beats. Wayne was already standing, broad shoulders rolling once, as though settling into an old drill. His scar caught the firelight as he slid the latch with one finger. Serena straightened on the bench, blanket tight around her legs, chin tilted high. Her golden eyes held steady, though Wayne noticed the faint tremor in her hands. He opened the door before they could strike it again. Rain misted in around 3 envoys standing on the porch, their armor etched with water sigils that gleamed like dull silver. Faces hard from years of ritual discipline, eyes sharp, empty of sympathy. They measured him once and swept the room with a quick pass, gaze locking on Serena in his black shirt, firelight behind her. The lead envoy spoke in a voice polished flat by repetition. She was taken by the river. You pulled her free. The law binds her to you. Speak your claim or speak your refusal. The record must hold. Wayne didn't move from the threshold. His posture was steady, weight balanced, but his eyes burned with the kind of quiet resistance that made other men hesitate. She isn't a record, he said evenly. She's a person. She speak. To you. The envoy blinked once, a flicker of surprise before his face smoothed again. The law does not ask her voice. It binds the rescuer. Behind Wayne, Serena stood. The blanket slid from her shoulders, pooling on the bench. Her hair was still damp, falling in green strands down her back, but her bearing was proud, unyielding. Then hear me anyway, she said. Her voice cut sharp through the small cabin. I am not property. I will not be a prize. If there is law here, it begins with my choice. The envoys shifted, not shocked by her defiance. They had likely heard it before, but unsettled that the human standing in the doorway had let her speak without interruption. Their leader's eyes flicked back to Wayne, searching his face for cracks. You protect her voice, the envoy said at last, but protection does not rewrite law. Wayne stepped forward, forcing the envoy to lift his chin slightly to meet his gaze. His voice stayed calm, but every syllable carried weight. Then write this in your record. She stays under my roof until she decides where she belongs. Not you, not me, her. The envoy's expression did not change, but a muscle ticked near his eye. Silence stretched long enough for the storm to whisper between them. Finally, the envoy inclined his head a fraction. At first light, we return. If no claim is spoken by then, she is cast out, branded unfit. That is the law. Wayne let the silence breathe before he answered, so they would register his pace, not theirs. At first light, he said, and he shut the door. The cabin filled with the sound of rain pattering on the roof, of fire snapping in the stove. Serena stood very still, her shoulders squared, but her knees trembled faintly beneath the oversized shirt. The moment the envoy's boots faded into the mud outside, the strength left her all at once, and she dropped back to the bench before her legs could give way. Wayne turned from the door, his face carved from stone. He said nothing at first, just moved the stool with one hand and slid it under her feet, not making a fuss of it. She pressed her palms against her thighs, forcing control back into her breath. "They'll come back," she said. Her voice was low, but not weak. "Good," Wayne replied. He stirred the fire, sparks leaping. "We'll be ready." She looked at him then, studying the scar on his jaw, the streaks of silver at his temples, weighing whether his steadiness was armor or truth. "You think I'm a problem to fix?" His eyes met hers, dark and steady. "I think you're a person who needs a clear plan. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we choose our words before they try to write them for us." Serena's gaze lingered, as though she wanted to argue, to cut at him with sharp edges, but instead, for the first time, her shoulders lowered, the smallest fraction of trust slipping through. The firelight painted her skin in shifting gold. Wayne sat opposite her, posture still alert, eyes never far from the door. Between them, the storm whispered its final hours, and the question of dawn pressed closer with every heartbeat. The fire had burned down to a bed of red coals, the room soft with their glow. Rain no longer hammered the roof. It whispered instead, a steady hiss that seemed to breathe with the river itself. Wayne sat in his chair by the door, boots planted, elbows resting on his knees. He hadn't shifted since closing it on the envoys. His eyes stayed alert, tracing every creak in the cabin walls, every gust rattling the shutters. Serena sat on the bench across from him, the blanket drawn around her shoulders again. The oversized black shirt clung to her from dampness, sliding low at the collar. Her golden eyes caught the firelight, sharp even in fatigue. She wasn't a woman used to silence. It was too easy for silence to turn into judgment. But Wayne's silence didn't feel like that. It felt like a man measuring the air, so she could breathe in it. At last, she broke it. "You speak like a soldier." His scar pulled faintly as he glanced at her. "I was one." Her chin tilted, testing. "And now you're not?" "I came home with medals and no desire for cities. I wanted quiet ground. The flood keeps me busy enough." "Rivers don't lie." Serena's eyes narrowed. "And people do." He didn't flinch. Often. A fire snapped, filling the space between them. She pulled the blanket tighter, leaning closer to the heat, but her posture stayed upright. "Proud. Do you know why I was in the river?" "Trial of return," Wayne said, his voice calm, as if repeating her own words back to her, until she heard their weight. Her mouth pressed thin. "A ritual to wash away stains. If I swam to the marker, I came back clean. If I failed, I carried the shame forever." Her fingers brushed the iron ring on the table, the one she had tossed down earlier. "But your law tangled with mine the moment you pulled me out." Wayne studied her a long moment before speaking. "What stain?" Her jaw tightened. He thought. She wouldn't answer, but then the words spilled, sharp and steady. "A man of rank wanted me for bond. I said no, in front of witnesses. He called me broken, unfit, afraid of men, cursed in the womb." His voice was louder than mine, louder than truth. She looked into the fire, the glow hard in her eyes. "So I jumped. I'd rather fight the river than his words." Wayne leaned back, his shoulders heavy, but his face unshaken. "You don't look broken to me." She laughed once, bitter and short, a sound without joy. "You don't know me. I know you didn't deserve to drown." Silence again, but this time it was different. Less empty, more fragile. Serena's breath hitched, though she smothered it by sipping the mint tea that had cooled in her cup. Wayne stirred the fire with a poker, sending sparks up the flue. The envoys will press again at dawn. They'll want me to claim or cast you out. Either way, they win. Her gaze locked on him. And what will you do? I'll listen to you. Her lips parted as if to argue, but the words caught. Her eyes searched his face, the scar, the silver at his temples, the steady way he held her gaze without demand. She set the cup down hard, as though cutting off her own weakness. No man gives choice freely, not in my clan, not anywhere. Wayne's voice was low, steady. Then maybe your world needs to change. The firelight flickered across her cheekbones, catching the damp shimmer of her green hair. She studied him long enough that the silence grew thick again, but this time, it wasn't distrust that filled it. It was something sharper, more dangerous. You don't look away when I test you, she said at last. You don't back down either. His mouth shifted, almost a smile, but not quite. I learned not to and more. Her blanket slipped, sliding off one shoulder. She didn't pull it back up. Then this is war, she said, her voice quiet but fierce. Wayne didn't argue. He sat steady in his chair, the storm whispering outside, the fire cracking between them. He had the look of a man ready to fight whatever war dawn would bring. Only this time, not for a flag, not for a medal. For her. The fire had burned low, reduced to red embers that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Outside, the storm had thinned to a drizzle, the steady hiss of rain against the roof broken, now and then by the groan of shifting branches. Inside, the cabin felt tighter, air heavy with warmth and unspoken things. Wayne sat near the door, his body still coiled as if waiting for a command that never came. Serena lay on the bench at first, wrapped in the blanket, but she hadn't closed her eyes. She kept glancing toward him, golden irises catching what little light remained. At last she pushed herself up, letting the blanket slip into her lap. The oversized shirt clung to her shoulders, damp hair still trailing down her back. She folded her arms as though bracing herself. If they cast me out tomorrow, do you know what that means? Wayne's voice was low, even. Tell me. Her jaw tightened. No bond, no roof, no work. I'll be marked unfit. The clan won't chain me, but they won't need to. The city will chew me up faster than the river. Wayne leaned forward, forearms on his knees, eyes steady. Then you won't go alone. Her gaze sharpened, suspicion flashing. And what do you want in return? Nothing. His tone didn't change. I want you alive. That's it. Everything else is your choice. Her throat worked, as if the words lodged there. She had heard promises before, but never without hooks. Slowly, almost against her own will, her hand lifted to the scar on his jaw. Her fingers traced the line down toward his chin, testing, as though she expected him to flinch or claim her. He didn't move, didn't even blink. His pulse beat hard in his throat, but his stillness was complete. You're not afraid of me, she whispered. Not of you, he said. His voice roughened, but stayed controlled. Only of what they'll try to do to you. Her hand lingered a breath longer, then fell back to her lap. Her eyes were bright, unsettled. She turned toward the fire. You keep saying choice, she said quietly. But choice is dangerous. What if I make the wrong one? Wayne's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. Then you live with it. Not them, not me, you. She stared into the fire, its glow painting her blue skin in shades of copper and gold. The silence stretched, heavy, until she finally turned her head, eyes locking on him with sudden sharpness. And what if my choice was you? The words cut through the room like a blade. Wayne's body went very still. For a long moment he didn't move, only let the question settle, as though he were testing the weight of it before lifting. Then he rose, deliberate, each step across the cabin slow but certain. He stopped just in front of her, the firelight at his back, his shadow, stretching over her. Her breath caught. She lifted her chin, daring him with her eyes. Wayne raised a hand, steady, fingers brushing one damp lock of green hair back from her face. His touch lingered for the span of a heartbeat, then fell away. His voice dropped low. Then it would be your choice, not mine. Her lips parted, but no words came. Heat climbed her throat, and she turned her face toward the fire to hide it. For the first time since he had pulled her from the river, she felt her guard falter not. From weakness, but from something more dangerous. Hope. The embers cracked softly, filling the space his restraint left between them. Dawn crept closer with every flicker of flame, and with it, the decision neither of them could escape. The first pale thread of dawn crept through the shutters, turning the cabin's corners to steel and shadow. Wayne was already on his feet, boots laced, jacket drawn, posture tight as a man braced for an ambush. He had not slept. His eyes burned, but his body stayed locked, every sense tuned to the faint drip of rain easing outside and the deep, steady rush of the river beyond. Serena sat on the bench, blanket draped loosely across her lap. She hadn't slept either. Her golden eyes were hollowed by fatigue, but the fire in them hadn't dimmed. She studied Wayne as he checked the latch once more, the quiet discipline of a soldier who knew dawn could bring death as easily as light. "They'll be here soon," he said, voice even. Serena's chin lifted, though her fingers tightened around the blanket's edge. "If you claim me, they'll call it honor. If you refuse, they'll call me ruined. Either way, they win." Wayne turned to her, eyes steady, jaw set. "Then you speak. Not them, not me, you." Something broke loose in her chest at those words. No hesitation, no demand, just space given. Where there had never been space before, it terrified her. It steadied her. She rose, letting the blanket fall away. The black shirt he had given her skimmed her thighs, damp hair braided back from her face, firelight catching the angles of her cheekbones. She looked like a woman walking to judgment and carrying it herself. The knock came before either could. Say more. 3 beats, deliberate, patient as stone. Wayne opened the door. The envoys stood in mist and wet earth, armor etched with river sigils, their faces blank masks of law. The lead one stepped forward. His voice was ritual flat. "Rescuer, the law demands your word. Do you claim the bound woman, or do you release her?" Wayne didn't move aside. His body filled the frame, shoulders broad, presence calm but immovable. "She speaks first." The envoy's eyes narrowed, as if the suggestion itself were an insult. "The law binds you, not her." Serena stepped forward then, bare feet silent on the wooden floor. She came to Wayne's side, not behind him, not cowering, but shoulder to shoulder. Firelight spilled through the doorway, catching the wet sheen of her skin, the proud lift of her chin. "My people say I was saved by him," she said, voice ringing steady. "That I belong to him. They demand he speak. They demand I wait. I say this instead." Her golden eyes swept over the envoys, like blades. "I belong to no man who does not first belong to me. If you need a record, then write this. I choose Wayne Tanner. Not because the river took me, not because you decree it, but because he gave me what none of you ever have. Choice." The air turned heavier than rain. The envoys shifted, silence like a stone pressing down on the porch. For a moment, even the river outside seemed to hold its breath. Wayne stood beside her, not stepping in front, not pressing her words down with his own, but steady as bedrock at her side. His voice came low, clear, and final. "You've had your answer. Leave." The lead envoy's jaw tightened. He stared at Serena, then Wayne, as though testing which would bend first. Neither moved. At last he inclined his head a fraction. The smallest crack in ritual armor. At first light tomorrow, the council will judge what cannot be accepted. Serena's voice cut sharp before Wayne could answer. It already is, by me. The envoy's mouth pressed into a line, and he turned. Boots sank into the mud as the three walked back into the mist, their armor fading into the gray like ghosts. Inside the cabin, silence stretched. Serena's hands trembled now, the weight of adrenaline leaving her. Wayne touched her elbow, steadying her without making it a claim. She turned toward him, eyes bright with both fear and something sharper defiance, alive and burning. "They'll hate me for this," she whispered. "They'll respect you for it," Wayne said, voice calm as steel. Her breath caught. "And you? Do you respect me?" Wayne's gaze held hers without a blink. "More than you know." The fire cracked behind them. The river rolled outside, no longer raging, but steady, vast, alive. For the first time since she leapt into it, Serena did not feel herself drowning. She felt herself standing. Mist hung over the river like a veil, pale gray under the newborn sun. The storm had passed in the night, leaving Tyaval Delta washed clean, though the ground still bled water with every step. The river itself rolled broad and quiet now, a giant that had already taken what it wanted. Wayne Tanner stood at its edge, boots planted in damp grass, posture straight, his scar catching faint light. He looked not like a man on trial, but like one prepared for whatever judgment came. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Serena stepped out barefoot, her long green hair braided with threads of silver riverweed she had gathered at dawn. Gone was the black shirt he had lent her. She wore a garment stitched from the torn remnants of her ceremonial cloth, no longer tattered shame, but cut clean, sharp, draped in a way that declared her pride. The fabric clung pale against her blue skin, a choice she had remade with her own hands. The clan was waiting. Dozens gathered in a loose half-circle along the riverbank, their eyes hard, curious, some unreadable. The envoys stood at the front, armor gleaming with sigils, masks of ritual carved deeper than flesh. They had expected resistance, perhaps a spectacle. They had not expected Serena to walk forward with her head high, her voice steady. She joined. Wayne at the water's edge, standing close enough that her shoulder nearly touched his. The river hissed quietly over stone, a sound filling the silence of the crowd. Serena lifted her chin, her voice carrying across water and faces. "My people say the river took me, and this man pulled me free. They say I belong to him by law. They demand he speak while I remain silent. But I will not be silent." Her golden eyes cut into the envoys. "Hear me. I belong to no man who does not first belong to me. If you must write a record, then write this: I choose Wayne Tanner. Not because of the river, not because of law, because he gave me what none of you ever have: choice." The words landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of shock moved through. The crowd murmurs, disapproval, awe. The envoys stiffened. Their leader stepped forward, voice clipped, ritual sharp. "This is not our way. Choice cannot erase the bind." Wayne's voice cut through, deep and steady as bedrock. "Then maybe your way needs breaking. I don't take her because law commands it. I take her because I want no other life than one with her, not as claim, not as chain, as wife." A hush followed. For a long breath, the river itself seemed to too. Pause. Serena reached for Wayne's hand, her fingers trembling only slightly. His larger, scarred hand closed around hers with unshaken strength. She drew in a breath, then leaned into him, pressing her lips to his. It was not hurried, not hesitant. It was final. A seal of their choice, their defiance, their bond. Gasps broke through the crowd. Some muttered in outrage, others in stunned silence, but no one stepped forward. Even the envoys, rigid in armor, bowed their heads a fraction, acknowledging not law, but the undeniable weight of what had just unfolded. Wayne turned, lifting Serena into his arms as though she were light as breath. Her laughter, free and bright, carried over the water. The river ran calm, sunlight scattering across its surface like molten gold. He walked back toward the cabin with her in his arms, every step steady, unhurried. She rested her forehead against his collarbone, not as a woman bound, not as a possession, but as a woman who had chosen and been chosen. For the first time since she leapt into the river, Serena no longer felt herself drowning. She felt herself free,